Dean Blunt is no doubt one of the most influential artists to modern music. Even though he's a mysterious figure, his music and overall influence is something we find in some of the most known artists today. He's an artist who lets the art speak for itself, and for sure, it clearly does. Whether it's his own projects like the unforgettable Black Metal, The Redeemer, and my personal favorite, Lucre with Elias Ronenfeld, or the endless amount of collaborations he's had including A$AP Rocky, Joanne Robertson, and Young Lean, just to name a few, you're always in for a ride when it comes to Dean's work. He has a lot of aliases and is part of a couple of great duos and bands where his different artistic choices stand out. He uses a lot of production techniques in his solo work to build a captivating world, making use of pitched vocals, dark liminal sounds, and dreamy strings, which gives you this feeling of darkness and bliss at the same time. And I'm sure I'm not even doing it enough justice explaining it, but it just pulls you in and makes you want to keep listening forever. If you don't know about Dean, make sure you go look him up, because I didn't know him, but once I did, I thought I was tweaking, bro. How could I not know someone who's so goated? Glazing aside, the feeling of his music coupled in with the mystery behind him makes Dean such a unique staple in the music industry. It really makes you wonder what the secret behind his production is and how he's managed to remain simultaneously private and respected by modern music's great artists. So today I'm gonna try and uncover those secrets to find out exactly what makes Dean's production so great. Now I will be breaking down two different tracks on this video which focus on Dean's solo work, and the first one is inspired by Black Metal and the other one by his later projects. So one of the biggest things you'll notice in Black Metal 2 is this usage of acoustic guitar. The guitar is the soul of the whole production, so I had to make sure that I get one that's as authentic and emotional as possible. I ended up finding this nice acoustic guitar sample on YouTube, and I just brought it in, arranged it nicely, pitched it down 200 cents, and then slowed it down too. As you can tell, it already has that somber feeling that you have in most of the Black Metal 2 tracks, but it didn't have that texture that I wanted, so I routed it to a couple of mixer track with the perfect fix. First of all, we have the tape track. This is just retro color with the default preset tweaked a little bit, and then an EQ just to cut the lows out and boost some of the highs. And then second of all, we have the chorus, this basic FL Studio vintage chorus. And then third of all, just to add some distortion to it, was the second tape with a low input and high output and a bit of saturation. I also added Fruity Fastest just to get a bit of that fuzz on the B preset, and this is how it ended up sounding. I really like the final sound that we have from it, so I just quickly consolidated it and put it back into our track. Now, even though we have the texture and that ambient dark guitar, what was missing was some of the low end, so I wanted to add my own with this right here. Now, the most notable thing about bass in Black Metal 2 is that it really doesn't stand out. Even though it's there, it doesn't try to get all the shine or really just remind you that it's there, so I kept it simple. Now, since we are trying to keep the bass minimal, I didn't do too much in terms of the effects. I just have a mono compressor just to have it glued together in the mix, a CLA bass amp with these settings, and finally an EQ just to boost the lows a little bit and clear some of the highs. Even though the track was already dark, gloomy, and textured, I just wanted to push it a little bit further by putting it 200 cents down. Putting the pitch sample and bass together, this is how they sound. The next thing that I wanted to do was add some of that atmospheric Dean Blunt ear candy, so I added these two analog lab synths as a call and response. As you could tell, they have a lot of texture to them, and basically I just added some fruity reverb and pushed the decay a little bit higher than usual, as well as the wet knob, and I also routed it back to the chorus and distorted tape. And for the second one, I just made it mono, pushed it down in the volume, and then messed around with these knobs right here, removing the lows and also some of the highs. And all in all, that's it for the chorus melodies. Now I did want to keep the whole thing very liminal and spacey, just like Black Metal 2. So for the verse, I also didn't do too much. It's basically a guitar and that's it. I wanted this guitar to act as a top layer to the sample that we already have. So I just have some simple notes playing around, and I added some guitar rig to make it stand out a little bit more. It's just the underwater preset, didn't change anything else on it. It just pushes the guitar a little back in the mix and gives it that ambient spacey flavor. And I'm pretty sure you already know by now, but most of the notes I'm playing right here aren't exactly on the grid. That's just so it feels authentic and alive. Once I was satisfied with the guitar, I just arranged it a little bit and then consolidated it, and this is how the final thing sounds together. By the way, if you want to support the channel and get a little some in return, just go to patreon.com/SEABUU and become a member. Becoming a member gets you full exclusive access to loops, project files, mixer presets, all of that stuff, a whole lot more. Just make sure you go to patreon.com/SEABUU. That's the first link in the description, and become a member. What are you waiting for? Now, something else that captures my ear a lot in the Black Metal 2 production is the strings. The way Dean uses strings just brings the whole production together and adds that final layer, that really that top coat. It's really essential. And the way that he does this is so subtle that unless you're really listening, you really won't catch it. So for my strings, I made sure that I capture that feeling. I just brought in some Roland SRX strings and played a couple of the notes that we have in the melodies, and I also added some effects just to give it that lusciousness. The effects I have on here are just Valhalla Vintage Verb with the decay pushed down, 3D delay, and I just routed it to the chorus. And bringing all of that together, it makes the second part of the track so much more enticing. Now the strings on the second verse are the same as the chorus, they just have an extra layer which is an octave down, and that covers everything for the melody. Now just like the textures and the melodies, the drums are very simple and they add to that liminal space in the production. I just opted to do it on here because I wanted to mess around with each individual one shot and just, you know, break out of that creative box. The drum sounds in Dean's production are very unique. They have this darkness and depth to them, and they're very acoustic, so I made sure to pick drums that fit that sound, and if they didn't, I just pitched them down, messed around with the volume a little bit, and then this gave me the final drum sounds that we have right here. You really don't want to do too much with the drums, so I made sure to keep the pattern simple, and the verse follows that exact thinking as well. It's really important to have those occasional off-grid hits just to keep it authentic. I'm pretty sure you could tell the drums have a bit of texture to them, and that's because of the effects I have on them. I have this parametric EQ with the tight drum sizzle preset, but I pushed the highs a little bit down. This Magma little tube, this compressor just to push it back in the mix, and I routed it to this tape. And just like all the other elements, once I was satisfied with the drums, I consolidated them and messed around with them just a little bit more. All that I did was just pitch it down 500 cents, and I also added some reverb with a lot of decay just to make it a little bit more subtle. Now, even though everything came together the way that I wanted it to, I wasn't quite done messing around with things. So on the master track, I added elastic pitch and pitched it down a whole semitone. I added magma tubes just to get that tube emulation, and I added soft clipper so the whole thing doesn't clip too much. This next track is more inspired by the collab EP between Joanne Robertson and Dean Blunt. I think it's called Backstage Raver. It does follow the same mentality, keeping things simple, but this one is slower and more emotional, so I'll just be covering a bit of what I did with this track. For this one, I wanted to do it different, so I started off with the bass, and it's just the same thing again, playing very simple notes and keeping it just, bare, because the bass isn't gonna stand out right here. I just played it on my bass, and this is the sound that I got. It's just 4 notes played repetitively, but simple enough to not overwhelm you. And then I have expand for the acoustic guitar. I got a very similar amp setup on the bass with the voltage amp, and then a parametric EQ to remove the highs and the mids, and then finally a mono compressor to glue it all together. And for the acoustic guitar, I just have a parametric EQ with the lows filtered out with a little bit of the highs too, and a vintage verb just to give it that spacey ambient feel. And I really wanted to add to the atmosphere, so I just added this diva synth with very similar chords. And I felt like the track needed a bit more texture, so I added this DAR guitar with very similar played chords and notes to the first guitar, and I put it on retro color with more distortion, and the other knobs I think I just kept the same with the vinyl 1 preset. And then finally I doubled that up with another DAR guitar, but this one is more of an accent. This one just sits in the background and contributes so much to the liminal space in the production, and the effects on it are just reverb, basic fruity reverb, and a EQ which filters out the lows and a bit of the highs. The next thing that I did for this chorus part was add some drums. This time I used Addictive Drums 2 with the vintage dry kit. The pattern I played here is very relaxed, somber, and in the background where it needs to be, and I just doubled it up with a basic hi-hat. On the drums I have Valhalla Shimmer just to make it more atmospheric, and also tubes just to get a little bit more punch out of the drums. Now just like the previous track, I ended up consolidating the drums and pitching them down a little bit, and then adding a little bit more effects on them. Bringing all of that together, that gives us the chorus. Now for the verse, I kind of sauced up the bass a little bit more by adding more notes, but it's still kind of simple. Even though I'm not playing exactly on time, it's still adding so much character to the track, and I ended up keeping it. And the final thing I added to the chorus was this vintage chorusy, very, you know, like a lot of reverb on the guitar, and it just adds so much to the ambience and atmosphere that I decided to keep it. Now the drums on the verse are a little bit more sauced up. I just added more bounce to it, more consistent hi-hats, this very weird bit crushed bongo sound that I also pitched down, and the final result is just a weird, you know, collection of drums that just, yo, I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. I really loved it. Now just like the previous track, even after everything came together, I wasn't quite done messing around. On the master, I just added elastic pitch and pitched it down a whole semitone. I added magma tubes, and I also added soft clipper just to keep it from peaking. And the whole thing just came together to give you this folky, experimental, you know, genre blend. And I really like how it turned out. And just like always, if you enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. And I'll also be dropping one of these in a Patreon, so make sure you join up, and I'll see you in the next one.